What happens when a royal guest thinks he can insult a beloved television host on his own show? In just 33 seconds, one comment turned a simple interview into the most explosive moment in talk show history. This is the story of how Prince Harry got himself kicked off Piers Morgan's show. The studio lights were hot that afternoon. Piers Morgan sat behind his desk, smiling at the cameras as his producers counted down. 3, 2, 1. He welcomed his viewers with his usual charm and confidence. Today's guest was supposed to be a big deal. Prince Harry had agreed to come on the show to talk about his life, his choices, and his thoughts on the media. Piers had done hundreds of interviews, thousands, probably. He knew how to handle difficult guests. He knew how to ask the tough questions while still being respectful. He was fair, he was firm, and he always gave his guests a chance to speak their truth. That was the kind of host he was. That was why people loved him. Prince Harry walked onto the set wearing a casual jacket and jeans. He sat down across from Piers, and the two men shook hands. The audience clapped. Everything seemed normal at first. Piers started with some easy questions. He asked Harry about his day, about how he was settling into his new life. Harry answered, but there was something cold in his tone, something off. "So Harry," Piers said, leaning forward with genuine interest, "you've made a lot of changes recently. Big changes. What do you want people to understand about your decisions?" Harry shifted in his seat. He looked at Piers with an expression that was hard to read. "I think people need to understand that I'm doing what's right for me and my family," he said. "I don't owe anyone an explanation." Piers nodded. "Fair enough, but you're here talking about it, so surely you want people to understand your perspective?" "I'm here because my team thought it would be good," Harry replied. His voice had an edge to it now. "Not because I need your approval or anyone else's." The audience went quiet. Piers smiled, trying to keep things light. "No one's asking for approval, Harry. I'm just trying to have a conversation. That's what we do on this show. We talk." Harry laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "Right, you talk. You talk a lot, actually. About me, about my wife, about my family. You seem to have a lot of opinions about my life." Piers kept his composure. He was a professional. "That's my job," he said calmly. "I'm a journalist. I comment on public figures. You're a public figure, but I'm always fair, and I'm always willing to hear your side of things. That's why you're here." "Fair?" Harry's voice got louder. "You call what you do fair? You've written columns about my wife. You've questioned her honesty. You've made her out to be some kind of villain, and you think that's fair?" The tension in the studio was thick now. Everyone could feel it. The cameras kept rolling. Piers sat up straighter. "I've expressed my opinions. Yes, that's what columnists do. But I've never attacked anyone personally. I comment on behavior, on actions, on inconsistencies. That's not unfair. That's holding people accountable." Harry shook his head. "Accountable? You don't know anything about accountability. You sit here in your comfortable studio, making judgments about people you've never met, situations you don't understand. You're a bully with a microphone." The audience gasped. Piers stayed calm, but his jaw tightened slightly. "Harry, I've invited you here to share your story. I've been nothing but respectful to you since you sat down. If you have a problem with things I've written, we can discuss that. But calling me a bully? That's out of line." "Out of line?" Harry stood up now, his voice rising. "You want to talk about out of line? You've spent months trashing my wife on television. You've called her a liar. You've said she manipulated me. You've made our lives hell, and you think you can just sit there and act like you're the victim?" Piers remained seated, his voice steady. "Harry, sit down. Let's talk about this like adults. I haven't made your life hell. You're the one who chose to go on television and make serious accusations. I'm allowed to have an opinion about that. Everyone is." "Your opinion?" Harry was pacing now. "Your opinion has consequences. You have a platform, and you use it to destroy people. You don't care who you hurt as long as you get your ratings." The audience was completely silent. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked shocked. Piers stood up slowly, facing Harry directly. "I care very much about the truth," he said firmly. "And I care about having honest conversations. But what I won't do is sit here and be disrespected on my own show. You came here voluntarily. No one forced you. If you want to have a discussion, I'm ready. If you want to throw insults, there's the door." Harry pointed at Piers. "There it is. The real you. The moment someone challenges you, you can't handle it. You dish it out, but you can't take it." "I can take plenty," Piers said, his voice getting firmer. "What I can't take is a guest who comes on my show under false pretenses. You didn't come here to have a conversation. You came here to have a go at me, and that's fine, but don't expect me to just sit here and take it. False pretenses? Harry's face was red now. You invited me here to ambush me, to make me look bad. That's what you do. That's all you've ever done. Piers crossed his arms. Harry, I've asked you maybe 3 questions. You're the one who's been hostile from the moment you sat down. I've been professional. I've been respectful. But you're acting like a child who didn't get his way. Don't you dare talk to me like that, Harry snapped. You have no idea what I've been through. What we've been through. You sit here in your bubble, judging everyone, acting like you're so much better than everyone else. I don't think I'm better than anyone, Piers replied. But I do think I deserve respect when someone's on my show. And right now, you're not showing any. Harry stepped closer to the desk. Respect? You want respect? After everything you've said? After all the lies you've spread? What lies? Piers challenged. Tell me one lie I've told. One, I'll wait. Harry fumbled for words. You said that my wife was lying about her mental health. You said she was making it up for sympathy. Piers shook his head. That's not what I said. I said I didn't believe certain aspects of one particular story. That's my right. I never said she was lying about her mental health. I never dismissed anyone's mental health struggles. Don't put words in my mouth. You implied it, Harry insisted. Everyone knows what you meant. No, Piers said firmly. You interpreted it that way. There's a difference. I choose my words carefully. If I'd meant to say she was lying about mental health, I would have said that. But I didn't. Harry laughed bitterly. Oh, so now you're playing word games. How convenient. You say terrible things, but when someone calls you out, you hide behind semantics. I'm not hiding behind anything, Piers said, his patience clearly wearing thin. I'm trying to explain my position, but you're not interested in understanding. You just want to be angry. You want to play the victim. The victim? Harry's voice was loud now, echoing through the studio. You're calling me the victim? You've made a career out of attacking my family. My mother couldn't escape people like you, and now you're doing the same thing to my wife. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This was getting personal. This was getting ugly. Piers took a deep breath. Harry, your mother was someone I admired greatly. Don't bring her into this. This isn't about her. This is about you coming on my show and being disrespectful. Disrespectful? Harry was almost shouting now. You don't know the meaning of the word. You've built your career on being disrespectful. You're a parasite. You feed off other people's pain. That was it. That was the line. Piers's expression changed. The patience was gone. Right, he said coldly. We're done here. You need to leave. What? Harry looked surprised. You're kicking me off? Yes, Piers said, without hesitation. You came here to have a conversation, or so you said. But all you've done is insult me and make accusations. I gave you every opportunity to have a civil discussion. You chose not to. So, yes, you need to leave. Now. Harry stood there, seemingly shocked. You can't kick me off. Do you know who I am? Piers walked around the desk. I know exactly who you are. You're a guest who's overstayed his welcome. And this is my show, my set, my rules. You need to go. This is unbelievable, Harry said, looking at the cameras. This is what he does, everyone. The moment you stand up to him, he shuts you down. No, Piers corrected. The moment you become abusive, I shut it down. There's a difference. You can disagree with me all you want. You can challenge me. But you cannot come on my show and call me a parasite and expect to stay. A security guard appeared at the edge of the set. Harry looked at him, then back at Piers. You're going to have me escorted out? Really? If necessary, Piers said. Or you can walk out with dignity. Your choice. Harry's face was a mix of anger and disbelief. Dignity? That's rich coming from you. The door, Harry, Piers said, pointing. Now. For a moment, it looked like Harry might refuse. He stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight. The entire studio held its breath. Then, slowly, he started walking. But he wasn't done yet. As he reached the edge of the set, he turned back. You know what your problem is, Piers, Harry called out. You're obsessed with me, with us. You can't help yourself. We live rent-free in your head, and it eats you alive. Piers didn't take the bait. Goodbye, Harry, he said simply. No, Harry continued. I want everyone to know. This man, this so-called journalist, he's nothing but a tabloid hack who got lucky. He acts like he's some champion of truth, but really, he's just a bitter man who tears others down to make himself feel important. The security guard moved closer, but Harry put up a hand. I'm going, but I want people to know what he really is." Piers crossed his arms and waited. His face was calm now, almost expressionless. He dealt with difficult guests before, but this was something else entirely. This was a public meltdown. Harry walked slowly toward the exit, but he kept talking, kept throwing insults over his shoulder. "You're irrelevant, Piers. That's why you talk about me. Because without us, without people like me to criticize, you'd have nothing. You'd be nothing." "Are you finished?" Piers asked coolly. "Almost," Harry said. He stopped at the door and turned one last time. "You think you won here today? You think kicking me off makes you look good? Everyone's going to see this. Everyone's going to see how you couldn't handle the truth, how you silenced someone who dared to challenge you." Piers walked back to his desk and sat down. "Harry, you weren't challenging me. You were insulting me. There's a difference. A challenge would be to debate me on the facts, to have an intelligent conversation about where we disagree. But that's not what you did. You came here to attack me personally, and I'm not going to tolerate it." "Of course you won't," Harry said with a bitter smile, "because you're weak. You pretend to be tough, but the moment someone really confronts you, you crumble." "I'm not crumbling," Piers said, his voice steady. "I'm enforcing basic standards of decency, something you clearly don't understand." Harry laughed, but it was a harsh sound. "Decency? From you? That's the funniest thing I've heard all day." The security guard gently touched Harry's arm. "Sir, we need to go." Harry pulled his arm away. "Don't touch me. I said I'm going." He looked back at Piers one more time. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Piers replied. "It's very much over." Harry stared at him for a long moment, then finally turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. The studio was silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath. Piers sat at his desk, straightening his papers. He looked directly at the camera and took a breath. "Well," he said, his voice calm and composed, "that was unexpected." The audience was still frozen. Nobody knew whether to clap, to gasp, or to stay silent. Piers continued, "I want to say something to everyone watching. I invited Harry here today in good faith. I wanted to have an honest conversation. I wanted to give him a platform to share his thoughts, his feelings, his side of the story. That's what I always try to do." He paused, making sure his words were measured. "But what you just witnessed was not a conversation. That was someone who came here with an agenda. Someone who wanted to attack me personally rather than engage in dialogue. And I won't apologize for ending it." The audience started to clap. Slowly at first, then louder. They were supporting him. They understood. Piers nodded in acknowledgement. "Thank you. Look, I'm not perfect. I have strong opinions. I express them forcefully sometimes. But I always try to be fair. I always try to let people speak. And I would have let Harry speak for as long as he wanted, as long as he kept it respectful." He looked down at his notes, then back up at the camera. "But calling someone a parasite? Saying they feed off other people's pain? That's not challenging someone. That's abuse. And I don't have to sit here and take it. Nobody does." The studio crew started moving again, adjusting cameras and checking equipment. The producer was talking into Piers's earpiece, probably telling him they needed to go to a commercial break, but Piers held up a hand, wanting to finish his thought. "I've been in this business a long time," he said. "I've interviewed presidents and prime ministers. I've talked to celebrities and activists. I've had disagreements on air before, strong disagreements. But there's a way to do it. There's a way to debate without being disrespectful." He leaned forward, speaking directly to the viewers. "Harry could have come here today and said, 'Piers, I think you're wrong about this. Let me tell you why.' And I would have listened. I would have engaged. We could have had a proper debate. But instead, he came here to attack me, and that's on him, not me." The audience applauded again. Piers smiled slightly, genuinely. "Thank you for your support. It means a lot. I know some people will watch this and think I should have just sat there and taken it. They'll say I should have been more understanding. But I disagree. Setting boundaries isn't being unreasonable. Expecting respect isn't asking too much." He glanced at his producer, who was making hurry-up gestures. "All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have our scheduled guest, who I'm sure will be far more pleasant to talk to. Stay with us." The commercial break music started playing. The camera stopped recording. Piers sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. His team rushed over to check on him. "Are you okay? That was intense. Do you want some water?" He waved them off with a tired smile. "I'm fine. Just another day at the office, right?" But it wasn't just another day. Everyone in that studio knew they'd just witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be talked about for a long time. A moment when a host had to make a choice between keeping a high-profile guest and maintaining his dignity. And he'd chosen dignity. During the commercial break, whispers spread through the audience. Did that really just happen? I can't believe Harry said those things. Piers handled it so well. Can you imagine if he'd lost his temper? He stayed so calm. The makeup artist touched up Piers's face while he sat quietly, composing himself. The stage manager counted down. 30 seconds. 20. 10. The cameras came back on. Piers was composed again, professional. His smile was back. "Welcome back," he said warmly. Before we continue with our scheduled programming, I just want to address what happened one more time, because I think it's important. The audience listened intently. Piers chose his words carefully. Mental health is a serious issue. I want to be very clear about that. I would never, ever dismiss someone's struggles. If Harry or anyone else thinks I did, I want to say directly, that was never my intention. What I've questioned, and what I will continue to question, are inconsistencies in stories. That's my job. He paused, making sure everyone understood. But that's separate from what happened here today. What happened here was that a guest became hostile and disrespectful, and when that happens, the interview ends. It's that simple. The audience nodded in agreement. They got it. They understood. Piers continued. I hope Harry finds peace. I genuinely do. But peace doesn't come from lashing out at people. It doesn't come from playing the victim. It comes from taking responsibility for your choices and moving forward with dignity. He smiled, ready to move on. Now, we have a wonderful guest waiting backstage, someone who actually wants to have a conversation. The audience laughed, the tension finally breaking. So let's bring them out and have the kind of interview we intended to have all along. But nobody in that studio, nobody watching at home, would forget what they'd just seen. The moment when a prince thought he could bully a television host and found out he couldn't. The moment when Piers Morgan stood his ground and said enough is enough. As the next guest walked out, smiling and friendly, the contrast couldn't have been clearer. This was how interviews were supposed to go. With mutual respect, with genuine conversation, with civility. It made what had just happened with Harry seem even more shocking. The crew members talked about it for days afterward. The audience members told their friends and family. Social media exploded with opinions and takes and hot debates. But in that moment, in that studio, after Harry had stormed off, one thing was crystal clear. Piers Morgan had done what he had to do. He'd drawn a line. He'd shown that being a guest on his show came with certain expectations. Basic human decency, respect. The ability to disagree without being disagreeable. And when Harry couldn't meet those expectations, when he crossed that line with his attacks and his insults, Piers had made the only decision he could make. The interview was over. The door had closed, and Harry was gone, leaving behind only the echo of his angry words and a lesson about what happens when you mistake a platform for a punching bag. Piers had given him every chance, every opportunity to reset, to recalibrate, to have an actual discussion. But Harry had chosen confrontation over conversation. He'd chosen insults over insight. And in the end, he'd chosen to leave in disgrace rather than stay and actually talk. That wasn't on Piers. That was on Harry. The host had simply done his job. He'd asked questions. He'd listened, at least initially. And when things turned ugly, he'd protected his show, his crew, and his own dignity. As the show continued with the new guest, everything returned to normal. The conversation flowed easily. There was laughter. There were thoughtful questions and thoughtful answers. It was what television was supposed to be. But nobody watching could quite shake the memory of what had come before. The image of Harry, red-faced and angry, pointing fingers and making accusations. The sound of his voice getting louder and louder. The moment when Piers had finally said enough. The walk to the door. The final insults thrown over the shoulder like grenades. And then silence. Piers wrapped up the show with his usual professionalism. He thanked his guests, thanked his audience, thanked everyone watching at home. He made no further mention of Harry. He didn't need to. What had happened spoke for itself. As the credits rolled and the cameras finally stopped, Piers stood up and shook hands with his guest. They chatted for a moment, laughing about something. Life went on. But that moment, those 33 seconds when everything changed, when a simple comment turned into a full-blown confrontation, would never be forgotten. It was the day a prince learned that titles don't protect you from the consequences of your behavior. It was the day a host showed that respect goes both ways, even on television. It was the day Prince Harry got kicked off Piers Morgan's show, and nobody who saw it could quite believe what they'd witnessed. A meltdown, a breakdown of basic civility, a reminder that no matter who you are, no matter what your background, there are still rules, still boundaries, still lines you shouldn't cross. And when you do cross them, when you attack someone personally and refuse to back down, you might just find yourself on the wrong side of a door, wondering how it all went so wrong so fast. That was the lesson of that day. That was the story that would be retold 1,000 times. Not as a triumph for Harry, not as a moment of speaking truth to power, but as a cautionary tale about what happens when entitlement meets accountability. Piers Morgan had won the day not by shouting louder or getting angry, but by staying calm, by keeping his dignity, and by knowing when enough was enough. He'd drawn the line. He'd enforced it. And in doing so, he'd shown everyone watching exactly the kind of host he was. Fair but firm, patient but not a pushover, respectful but not weak. And that, in the end, was what made the whole thing so memorable. Not the shouting or the drama, but the quiet strength of a man who refused to be bullied on his own show.